Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Christopher Leese. We warmly welcome the family of Gunner Harold Douglas Hennebery, whose story will be told shortly. We're honoured to acknowledge Rear Admiral John Ocken, Director, Warfare Integration Directorate, United States Navy, and the accompanying delegation. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record, which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Gunner Harold Douglas Hennebery. Harold Hennebery was born on the 28th of August 1906 in Yea, a town about 100 kilometres northeast of Melbourne. The son of John and Jessie Hennebery, he grew up alongside his brother Alan and sisters Verna and Myrtle. He attended Yea Primary School and then Yea High School. After his education, he went on to work as a painter and decorator. On the 24th of May 1940, Hennebery enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. He was initially posted to the 2nd 14th Battalion and began training with the 4th Training Battalion. In early December, Hennebery was posted to the newly raised 2nd 4th Anti-Tank Regiment. After initial training on the 23rd of May, he left Melbourne with his regiment, bound for Singapore. For many years, a potent symbol of British power in Southeast Asia, Singapore was considered an impregnable fortress, and Australian governments had been wedded to it as the linchpin of defence policy. As Japanese invasion forces swept through the region, this assumption was to prove disastrously incorrect. With numerical superiority of air, sea and land forces, and freedom in deploying and manoeuvring these forces, the speed and apparent ease of the Japanese invasion of Malaya took many by surprise. On the 8th of February, Japanese forces streamed into Singapore across the narrow Straits of Johor on the island's northwest. Once pushed back into Singapore Island, the Australians were spread too thinly over too wide a front and were unable to prevent Japanese amphibious landings. When Singapore was surrendered on the 15th of February, most of Hennebery's regiment was spread among other units. They were ordered to rendezvous at the Singapore Botanical Gardens, where they would hand over their weapons. Reaching the gardens, the group decided to remove the firing mechanisms from their weapons, which were thrown into a pond. The men then jumped into the pond themselves, happy to have their first wash after weeks of fighting. The captured men were marched to Changi, along the way witnessing gruesome sights that bode ill. They found it particularly hard to ignore grisly lines of decapitated heads of Chinese civilians mounted on rows of bamboo poles lining the sides of the road. Hennebery, who was known in his regiment by his nickname of Prawn, made light of the situation. As someone who served with him recalled, his eyes always twinkled and he was forever on the lookout for a chance to have fun. A well-known prankster, Prawn Hennebery used his ready sense of humour to take the sting out of the circumstances and to make those around him feel at ease. Those who remembered him recalled that the more adverse the conditions, the easier it was for him to see the brighter side of life. When a nasty case of dermatitis was being contracted by many at Changi, Hennebery perhaps got the worst of it, suffering from the intensely uncomfortable skin problem in the most uncomfortable of areas. After receiving treatment by Australian doctors at Changi, he responded with mock alarm, "I've been ring-barked." When the Japanese began sending prisoners to external work parties, those selected considered themselves lucky. Led by the promise of better food and a chance to escape the tedium of Changi, from May onwards, groups of prisoners of war were sent for labouring work at the notorious Burma-Thailand Railway. They were starved of food and medicine and forced to work impossibly long hours in remote, unhealthy locations. By the time the railway was completed in October 1943, approximately 13,000 prisoners of war, including more than 2,600 Australians and an estimated 80,000 to 100,000 civilians, had died. Many of the prisoners were regularly beaten by guards, the worst of whom could be found at the notorious Hellfire Pass. Rations were soon cut and most men lost around half of their body weight. Tropical diseases were rampant. Malaria, dysentery, beriberi, blackwater fever and cholera all took a toll. Despite his good-humoured response to the horrors of the prisoner of war camps, Hennebery was among those who did not come home. He died of illness on the 7th of January 1944. His remains were later buried at Hennebery War Cemetery, where they lie today amongst almost 7,000 former prisoners of war. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Gunner Harold Douglas Hennebery, who gave his life for us for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.